Punishment, which pairs humorous and often relatable tales of dating, love, heartbreak, and redemption with dessert recipes, offering readers an entertaining collection of stories and recipes. So welcome, Julie.
Thank you.
What a great place to have an interview. I love this place. It's so cute. We're going to get started with a couple of questions for you. To start with, tell us about the inspiration for the book. How did it all come to be?
Originally, the book was supposed to be a cookbook. That's what I was working on. I'm a baker. I wanted to do dessert recipes. And then I wanted to tie it into sort of how my blog 2-Bit Tart is set up, which is a little snippet about what's going on in my life and then a dessert recipe following. So I had some of the recipes I wanted to use, and I went to write a little snippet, and that little snippet turned into 30 pages about my boyfriend, Brett. And then I thought, okay, and I sort of set that aside and then started to write another little snippet, and it turned into another like 15 pages, and I'm like, okay, maybe this book is a memoir with recipes versus a cookbook with just a couple snippets in it. So that's sort of how it came about, almost by accident. It knew what it wanted to be, even if I didn't.
It knew what it wanted to be. I love
that.
That's such a cool way to put it. But you're going back like 30 years. How do you remember all of this? Some of the details in the beginning especially are just like, wow, how did you remember all that?
It's a lot of it is because I journal. So luckily I had my journals. I kept them. I didn't burn them. And so in a lot of ways, what I was doing is I was taking a journal entry that I had about some, rough time or good time I had, and then I was just sort of having to close my eyes and remember and think back and remember. And a lot of stuff, little bits sort of came to me a little bit at a time. Even after the book was published, I would think about an event or a person and go, I didn't include that about him. And then in 2008, I started the blog, so I had all of those posts to kind of work back from. And with the Jason chapter, I had all of his letters,
right?
So that was really helpful to me as well.
Yeah, and I know, exactly like you say, as soon as you start telling people a story, all of a sudden the details just kind of
it just sort of and I'm thinking about the book 24/7 when I'm writing it, so just stuff was coming out, usually in the shower, and I'm screaming from the shower, hey Google, take a note.
The stories, some of them are heartbreaking and some of them are funny, some of them are cringy. How did you tie in? I oftentimes found myself just like literally laughing out loud. How did you make it humorous, especially those cringy and heartbreaking parts?
I think life in general is pretty funny. And I didn't set out to really write it that way. I originally I just wrote what was in my head. And 30 years of dating, first dates are hilarious. New relationships are hilarious. What people do with each other are hilarious. And so I kind of realized after I'd done the first draft that there was some funny moments in there. And so then I went back maybe where there wasn't something quite so funny and looked at it as somebody sort of standing outside the frame and going, what's humorous about that? And so then was able to add some additional funny bits in.
So that's interesting, not part of the question, but I know you read it over and over and over again, and to, take each time you read it to look at it from a different perspective, how does this person see it, how does that person see it?
Yeah, it was, I didn't do that intentionally, but it was just, it's so personal that you try to I needed to kind of step back from it and say, hey, is this even interesting? Is it something that somebody's going to want to read?
Right.
And so that was sort of how I had to look at it. So I was thinking, last time I was here, I noticed the planes going over.
Yeah.
Can we do something like every plane goes over, we all do this, and whoever's the whole not it thing.
So you've got like 6 or 7, I think, stories in the book. And I know how old you are. So I know that there's a few that probably didn't make the cut. Tell us about them.
Yeah.
Who didn't make the cut and why?
There are definitely additional, because I've never been married. I've dated my whole life. This spans 30 years. And really, I chose the one that I felt were sort of the archetypal relationships that I had, where they were relationships that it would almost be duplicating a situation or a type, because I definitely have a type. And then the book would have ended up being like War and Peace. So I chose the ones that I almost feel like came to me easiest, the ones that I thought of when I was writing the book, and dove deeper into those.
Okay, and then how did you tie that into, talking about being heartbroken, and then how does the baking evolve and tie into that?
So, I mean, one thing that you'll know about me is if I love you, you're gonna get baked goods.
Yes,
that's the thing is baked goods are my love language. It's what I do. Baking is what I do to show people that I care about them, that I love them. So I think that's the first part, is that for a lot of these men, I was baking with them or deciding not to bake for them. But then also, the kitchen in itself is sort of my safe space. So coming home from a bad date that just went horribly wrong, the best thing I can do is just get into the kitchen, get some flour, some butter, some sugar, bake my heart out, and then whatever I've made, that sort of becomes my pacifier. Then I can eat the cookies that I just made and get over that date. With deeper heartbreak, it tends to be more things that have yeast in them, things that are needed, that need sort of get that anger or that heartbreak, knead it into the bread, and then make some cinnamon rolls or something that I can then go out and share with the neighbors or whatever, and share love, turn heartbreak into something that I love to share.
And did the baking evolve over the years as the relationships evolved? Did it change any from the beginning to the end?
I probably became a better baker. It's one of those first date questions I have for people is like, what are your favorite flavors? What's your favorite dessert? Like that, I always ask that. And then, I'll try to sort of feed those flavors into whatever I'm baking. The Dexter chapter, that was something I asked him, and his were a lot of almost like ice cream flavors, like chocolate chip and caramel and salted caramel. And so then I started making those for him. And then, there's somebody else that I dated that's in the book, just a short story, that he's like, I don't know, I like everything. I don't know. I'm like, okay.
So I know we talked about this, it's not on my list of questions here, but we talked about this before. What about, were there any that didn't like your desserts? Sorry, I'm throwing a wrench in.
I know. No, I think that's great. Well, okay, so again, let's talk about Dexter again. It's not that he didn't like them. He was not really. It was just like he expected it. So so I'd be making these breakfast buns that I've worked on all day because they've had a couple of rises. It takes an hour to have a proof, and I'd bring them to him all like, here's my love on a plate, and he's like, oh, thanks.
Yeah, that wouldn't work, no. And then, so what challenges have you faced through this whole process, just the writing of the book and everything?
So I'm not a writer, so there was a lot of imposter syndrome that went on throughout the book process. I say I'm not a writer. I didn't think I was a writer. I'd written the blog, but I didn't go to school for writing. I loved books, but I'd never tried something this big. And so throughout the process, a lot of times I'm like, what am I doing? This is crap. I probably wanted to stop and start 100 times. And I went to a writer's workshop down in San Diego. And one of the instructors there, another writer, had this postcard that she handed me as I'm sort of talking about, I'm not really a writer, and it says, imposters don't have imposter syndrome.
I love that.
Which is perfect. It was perfect for me. So,
Flight pattern.
Yeah. So that actually is on my bulletin board, front and center, whenever I was having doubts about my ability to finish the book, and it really helped me to to be able to finish it. My editor also helped me on that. She's like, you are a writer, and so it took me a while to kind of say, yeah, okay, I guess I am. Even though I didn't have that formal training, it's something that I can now say.
That's awesome. I love that quote too. I'm definitely going to use that from now on.
Maybe I can pass that on to you.
Tell me about the material that didn't make the book. Not just the guys, but the stories. You were pretty. I'm not to give anything away, but you talked a lot about your family life too, and your dad.
I did.
So what didn't make it?
Really, overall, nothing didn't make the book. I realized as I wrote it, the times that I tried to be coy about what was going on or didn't want to explain completely, the writing didn't flow. Yeah. So my thought was, I'll write everything, and then the editor will come back and she will say, nah, don't say that, don't do that. And going into it, I was like, if you don't want to use that chapter, we don't have to use it. And she didn't take anything out. Nothing. In fact, she had me add a chapter. It's the last chapter. She was the one who said, you need to sort of take all that you learned along this process and put it into words. And I'm like, do I have to do another recipe too? She's like, yep.
Back to the kitchen.
Right.
I know how much you hate that.
I think I was done. There were 39 recipes, but now it's a nice even 40, so I think I'm good at this point.
How long did the whole process take writing it?
I say 4 years. It was actually 5 years. It started in 2021. It was still during COVID, but it was we thought we were getting out of COVID, and then we had an uptick. And I was like, I need a COVID project. And so friends suggested that I kind of start this. And I had thought about it before. And I went ahead and, I started writing it. So 2021, I think in summer of 2022, I met my former boyfriend, Jason, Michael, who we were together for 4 years. And so that first year of dating, I didn't get any writing done. I was with him all the time, or we were hanging out together. Right. So I kind of put it away then, and then picked it up again in 2023.
Okay, so about 3 or 4 years. And then tell me about what was your routine? Because I always think there's no way I could go through this whole process of writing a book. I'm just not that disciplined. Tell me about the routine you used.
It was hard when I was working, and then I retired in 2023 in May, and that helped me a lot. So I'm definitely I definitely am a night owl. So I'd get up around, when I wasn't working anymore, I'd get up around 9 and have my first cup of coffee. And then I'm lucky enough to have a little room in the back of my house, separate from, a little guest house in the back of my house. And it is my writer's room. So, at 10 o'clock, I'd sort of stumble out there with my laptop and my second cup of coffee, kind of not getting distracted by the laundry that needs to get done or the cats climbing all over my laptop or anything else, and just being able to focus on the book. I would get a writing prompt for the day to kind of get me started, and I would write for 10 minutes straight, just whatever was coming out to get those juices flowing, and then I'd start working on whatever I needed to work on. I would, you write your first draft, you look at it again, you clean it up, you look at it again, you clean it up again. I'm a slow writer, and it would take me, at the end of the day, I'd leave the writer's room around 4 or 5 o'clock. I'd probably have 3 pages written to a point where I liked what I was saying. Like I was happy with it enough to walk away from it.
So it sounds like kind of a hybrid of organic and discipline.
Kind of, yeah, which is sort of, I kind of feel like that's sort of how like my work life has been throughout my life. But it was grueling because in addition to it being a writing daily, which was not something I was used to, it was also like a therapy session because I was pulling all this stuff out. And now with, you know, years and years of years like looking back on it, seeing new things and sort of like you know, kind of pulling those strings apart and seeing what was going on and finding patterns and things like that. And so at the end of the day, I was like Netflix and dinner, and that was sort of it for me for a while because it was really, it was mentally grueling.
Yeah, it had to have been emotionally draining.
It
Did you have
was.
to go through like any grieving processes of, you know, some of these experiences while you're dredging everything back up?
I don't know if I went through full grieving, but I know with the Jason chapter, which is probably the most emotional, there were times when I was writing sections and I was literally, tears were streaming down my face as I was writing it because I was, because said, you know, angry at 23 or whatever, angry at 23, now looking back at it at my age going, knowing the mistakes I made and having to live with those mistakes was sometimes very hard.
Yeah.
And the emotion that was there with both of us, we loved each other very much, and young love is very emotional.
Well, I know it's definitely when you're reading it, you can feel those.
I know, we've got
I found myself even at times crying over some of the things that you're writing about. So I know you had to pull that out even just as you were writing it.
Yeah.
What else did you discover during this whole process? Was there anything surprising to you that you didn't expect?
I think that comes out in the book. I thought I was writing a cookbook. And then after I realized that, B, I thought I was going to write about all of these like difficult relationships and terrible relationships and why can't I get this right? Because with all of these different types of people, and then going through it and realizing, oh, they're not that different. As I'm writing this out, going, oh, I'm repeating what I've always repeated here. And these men I am choosing these men that have these tendencies to sort of do the same thing. And then I know maybe some people haven't read the book yet. In the middle of all this, Dad is popping up, and I'm like, why is Dad popping up? Yeah. And I couldn't get him out of my head, and I finally wrote that chapter thinking that wasn't going to make it into the book, and it did because it ties into everything. Yeah.
And again, more of that therapeutic process going through all of it.
I am so much healthier now that I've written it, I think, in my romantic life, because I have taken the time to sort of untangle everything.
Yeah.
You know, the last boyfriend that I did have, it was probably one of the longer relationships I've had, and definitely the healthiest.
Yeah. Okay. I was going to ask you to tell us more about that, but I won't. Might get a little too personal.
Yeah.
And then, what do you want when your readers read this, aside from the humor and, you know, the heartbreak and everything else, what takeaways do you want them to have?
I really want people to connect to the stories. I understand that not everyone has lived my life and chosen to be single their entire life. And maybe some people have, you know, married out of high school and never had really a dating experience, or you know, married their high school sweetheart. But regardless, what I've found is that people can connect with these stories. Mm-hmm. When I originally wrote the book, I thought, okay, you know, this book's going to be for women between this age group in this situation. And what I found is that people are coming to me going, oh my gosh, you know, your book touched me, and this is why it touched me, and it's always for a different reason. And it's almost as if the readers can overlay their own experiences on top of my stories, which that I love. I mean, I want people to feel like they've just had coffee or drinks with like their friend, and their friend has been telling them about what's been going on in their life. That's what I hope they come away with.
That's exactly how it felt for me. I know, I'm married, I've got kids. and completely different lifestyle than you had, and yet every story was so relatable.
Thank
Totally
you.
connected
I'm
with
glad.
you. Yeah,
Aw.
I'm sure other people feel the same way. I watched you struggle through the process of writing this and everything else, and I know that one of the biggest challenges was the publishing industry.
Yes.
Yeah. So tell us about that. What was that like?
So I mean, there's the top 4 publishers, which if you don't have, I don't even know, 100,000 Instagram followers, or you're not a known author, you're not Stephen King, or you're not an actor that can sell tons of business, they don't want to talk to you. And agents don't want to talk to you. They won't even talk to you, I know. They won't even talk to you without an agent. In addition, there are smaller publishing companies, but they take maybe 3 books a year that they'll take on. So I think that was one of the biggest challenges for me. Is I wanted to do the book right, but I didn't know how to break in, because I didn't have any of those things, and to even get somebody to read my manuscript and or read a portion of it. Usually it's the first 10 or 20 pages, and then ask for the manuscript was very hard going. It was very hard going.
And even these events like this, I mean, that's beyond the publishing part of it, the whole marketing part of it.
Right.
Really, I mean,
yeah.
I know you've really put a lot into it.
I have. December, I'm going to be taking a little break here.
And then, how do you manage negative feedback? Now, granted, I haven't heard much. I've heard a lot of you should do this, you should do that.
Yeah.
But negative feedback, that one's tough. How do you handle that?
So they say in the industry you need to have a thick skin, and I'm the first to admit I don't have a thick skin. I wish I did. I don't. I felt like I wrote the best book I could where I was in my life. And I don't really want other people's opinion of it to in any way influence how I feel about the book that I wrote, or influence my writing in the future. So I don't read reviews. I read, I had some friends that did reviews, and I read those, but I have not read reviews in a couple of months now. It's been a couple of months. And it's really just because I didn't want that influence. I didn't want that negative feedback. I'm sure there's going to be haters. I'm sure I'm going to get, especially on social media, there's always haters, and I just have to sort of separate myself from that.
Is that hard for you to not read those? Because I know that would be hard for
It's
me.
not hard for me to not read those.
Hard.
No, I'm like, unless you are an author, that maybe is coming from a different place than just somebody who has never had that struggle. Our book club, we're not, we read books that are Booker Prize winners, things like that. We're not nice to those people. We kind of rip them apart a lot of times and really try to get to the meat of it. And I don't know that I don't know that I want that. I have done 2 book clubs where my book has been read, and I was kind of a little bit there was some trepidation going in there, going, what's this going to look like? And they were actually really supportive and very, very sweet. So maybe having the author there is a little different than when we...
Well, especially when you're bringing cookies,
That's true too, yeah. And I did bring dessert.
And then if someone were to come to you who was, wanted to write a book, how would you mentor them? What advice would you have for them?
I think the advice, don't do it. This is my first book, so it's really hard for me to say how I would mentor them. But I would just say to just get it out. Instead of just waffling about should I, could I, just get it out and say what you want to say. And, you can always go back and either edit it, or decide it's not the piece, but maybe something that you've said in the book will take you on a different. I just feel like, for me personally, I felt like I had to get these stories out there. You know, after I thought it was finished, so I went through, I think, 3 full edits from start to finish where I changed everything, sent it to my editor. There were 2 more rounds with her. Then I had a copy editor. There were changes with her, and then I had a proofreader, and there were changes again. So there was like 7 or 8 renditions of this book, and it's very, very different. When I thought it was done, it was far from done.
Yeah. And then, so what, we're about out of, I don't know how much longer you wanted to go. We're at 11:35. How much
Okay.
time do we have?
We've got some time still,
Okay,
actually.
so we could open it up for questions and answers. But I think, what's next for you after all of this?
I've got a few things in the works. So I definitely I'm still going to be on this sort of marketing promo situation. I've got a lot of things I want to do with libraries and some other stuff like that. I have some ideas for future books. They're not going to be another memoir. I laid it all out for everybody to see.
I wanted to ask. Sorry.
No problem. I don't know that I want to do that. There are some other, there's sort of 3 different books that I sort of have in mind. Also maybe a micro bakery.
Yeah.
I've had somebody reach out to me that I used to work with that we're talking about maybe gelato, a gelateria, which I would help him get that up and running. I wouldn't actually be involved in it because I did go to gelato school in Italy, and so I know how to do it, and so that's on the back burner as well, and see if he reaches out.
So the one question I missed that I was trying to grasp a minute ago was, you have so many intimate details. You're literally an open book when everything that you've explained. What's it like when you are talking to somebody and you know that they've read your book and you know that they've shared some of those intimate details? How do you manage that? Because I'd be like, I'm running away.
I know, it's hard sometimes. I mean, there's believe me, when I published, I say hit the publish button, but you don't really do that. But when I hit the publish button, I was like, oh shit, what did I just do? You know, my family's gonna read this, my neighbors are gonna read this, my friends are gonna read it. And sometimes I still, when somebody comes up and says, I just read your book or something like that, it's embarrassing. It can be embarrassing, but I don't think that there's anything in my book that people have not actually experienced in their own way on some level. So it's just people don't talk about it, and I just did it. And I think, you know, I want to say, like, when I'm on my deathbed, I don't think I'm going to say, oh, I shouldn't have said that. I think I'm going to say, I wrote the book.
Yeah.
I don't want to say, I wish I wrote the book, or I didn't say that. I think I wrote the book. I did it. It's out there. It's a living, breathing thing now.
Yeah, that's amazing. Do you want to open it up for any questions?
Sure.
Anybody in the audience have a question?
Go ahead.
I do. So I've seen you, neighbor Nina here.
Yes.
One thing that popped into my head as you were talking just a little while ago, talking about navigating the relationships and so on, and baking as therapy. Were you seeing a therapist to help you navigate relationships? And if you were, do you think that would have changed your approach or even the desire to write the book or the recipes?
I was not seeing a therapist at the time. I have seen therapists for two of the relationships. One is Dexter, and the other one is Jake. Sorry, not Jake, Brett. Because both of those sort of really floored me. You know, Dexter had a very bad narcissistic tendencies, and anybody who's dealt with a narcissist, when you just realize that everything they've told you is a lie, the entire relationship is a lie, and they are entirely a different person, it messes you up. You know, for me, this was later in my life. This was in my early 50s, and I was thinking, how did I let this happen? Like, I thought I was a smart, savvy woman, and how did this happen to me? And I really needed to work through that. So I was seeing a therapist at that point. And then with Brett, it was more that I kind of thought he was the one I was going to be with for the rest of my life. And that threw me for a loop as well. Those are the only two, but both of my therapists at the time sort of kicked me out of therapy. They're like, yeah, you're fine, go on with your life. So I was my own therapist when I ended up writing at the point that I wrote the book.
Now, I feel like you had a goal, you set out to do this, you accomplished it, and I feel like you're like a successful author. I like totally admire you.
Thank you.
Do you feel like you're successful, or do you feel like there's more to do?
I always feel like there's more to do. So that's one of my, what I would say is one of my traits, is that if I see something, I will just chug along to get there. I'm okay. People say that that's my, the Taurus in me. I don't know if that's true, but it's definitely, I see a goal and I'll chug along towards that goal. And I wasn't feeling like I was successful. Like I was like, okay, it's published. Now I got to do this. Now I got to do this. Now I got to do this. And I realized I wasn't celebrating my wins at all. So I would say probably about 2 months ago, every day when something great happened, I was writing it down to say, you know, I just did this podcast, or, you know, I just signed, you know, Arvada Bookstore just asked me to speak at their store. So I started doing that, and then I started feeling a lot better about what was happening. I still think that I have a long way to go, but I'm trying, I'm out there, I'm hustling it. You know, I really, it's not about making money. I want to get people to read these stories because I think they will resonate with a lot of people, and I just want to share that sort of almost community with them.
Yeah, and I really enjoyed, you know, having grown up in Orange County as well. I also really enjoyed, you know, the references,
all the little
local
different,
references.
all the local references.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Go for it, Paul.
I have friends of mine and friends of yours that ask if the recipes connect to the guys at all. Like, are there just like willy-nilly recipes, or are there a connection to the recipes?
There are connections to the recipes. Each chapter is different. The Dexter chapter, almost all of those recipes are recipes that I made for him, except for the German chocolate cake that didn't get made for him. You know, some of the other ones that they're more loosely tied in. So I had written that there's a piece in the Edmund chapter that's about chocolate, and I had written that piece way before I knew what recipes I was going to pair. But then after writing that, I'm like, well, I might as well put the chocolate recipes in there, and so I did that one. Jason as well. So much of Jason is about the roses, and how roses and rose petals sort of follow us throughout our almost 10-year journey. And I love baking with rose, so I thought, okay, that's a good place to put the rose recipes. The final recipe, which is in the final chapter, well, actually, the section on my dad, those are both family recipes. The final recipe was a recipe that I created for the book, that is based off of something that I love making. It's a breakfast bread. It's called Zabassier. But the recipe I use is actually somebody else's recipe, and so I couldn't include it, and so I made a cupcake version with the flavors that I love. And so it's sort of the recipe that sort of was, I felt like was me on a plate. It's me on a plate, in other words.
Yeah, just going back to your question on the therapy and counseling, I thought in the Jason part, there were some moments where I believe you or him expressed and maybe seeking some kind of counseling, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Why did that not?
It was him. He wanted to do couples therapy. And I was young at the time and thought, what can therapy possibly do? What can therapy possibly do to help us? You know, it probably would have been a great thing for us to do. I don't think it would have changed the final outcome, but I think it would have helped both of us, and it would have helped the relationship immensely.
Oh, maybe a follow-up on that. Did you omit any letters?
I did.
Because reading some of them, I thought there had to have been a very
Yeah.
But I was like, maybe.
So the challenges were that I don't have my letters to him unless I had drafts of them in my journal. So certain times I was writing, like I'd be like, okay, this is the letter I'm gonna write to him, and I'd write it out in my journal, and so I had it. But all of the letters that I gave to him, I don't have. In addition, I actually at one point took all of our communications in my journals. This was probably 20 years ago, and put them into like just a Word doc, and that alone is over 100 pages. So it could almost have been its own book. So I trimmed, and then my editor said, you need to trim, you need to trim, you need to trim. So we tried to really, there was so much poetry, and you know, a lot of people don't like poetry, and so I didn't want to pull away from that. There's one rather long poem in there. I don't even know, I think it's maybe 6 pages long or something. And everybody told me to trim it, and that was where I sort of put my foot down, and because every time I read it, it makes me cry, and I'm like, no, I'll trim this other stuff, but that one is staying in the book, so.
I finally made it to
Hi!
which is crazy.
I know you've had a lot going on. Thank you for being here.
I apologize, I have not read the book, but now I'm really gonna get it. It's so fascinating.
And they're selling it here, so.
I have a few things. One of them, I enjoy play, musical, all that stuff. A lot of times you'll see a play or a musical about a personal, somebody famous, anything, somebody famous. A lot of times they'll include things that I always thought is so intimate. You really don't have to include it in there. You know, to me, I feel like perhaps out there people might judge you in some way. Did you have anything like that you decided really I'm not going to put in there because perhaps I will get negative?
When you read it, you'll understand. No. And in fact, okay, so here's a little story here. So on 2 separate occasions, men that I used to know from years ago have showed up to my events, flirted with me, said, you know, hey, how can I keep in touch with you, things like that. And I'm like, you know, bought one of my books, and then they're reaching out to me right after the event to say, hey, what's going on? After they read the book, crickets. I get nothing. I'm now calling it my man repellent. Like if there's anybody who wants to date me that I don't want to date, I'm just handing him my book and going, here you go. Here's my, yeah, exactly. With that said though, my last boyfriend, Michael, I know I've talked about him already a little bit. He was with me throughout this process. He was a magazine editor, and so I was often going to him with questions and wanting to get his feedback and asking him to do the little drawings that are actually in the book. And he was my biggest supporter. I know it wasn't easy for him to hear the dirty details of my previous relationships, but I can't say enough how appreciative I am to him, to the support that he gave me throughout this process. And he's the kind of guy, if I'm in a relationship again, that I want, that can read the book, understand that's my past, understand everyone has a past, and is okay with it.
And I think you said that was one of the healthiest breakups you
It
ever
was.
had.
It was.
And
We're
you're
still
friends.
we're still really good friends.
Yeah.
We both. I turned him on to Great British Baking Show, so each new session or each new episode comes out on Friday, and then we're texting each other. Oh my God! Could you believe what happened?
Do you agree people who love baking versus people who love cooking are totally different personalities?
They are. And I know that, baking is exact. But what's funny is you get to a certain point with baking where the foundation is exact, and then you can go play scat. Like you can go take it wherever direction you want. So, you say, I want, if you want a cookie that's like a chocolate chip cookie in texture, this is what you need to do. These are your ratios. But then you can put whatever you want into it. You can go crazy. You can top it with caramel. You can, put, I don't know, whatever in it. M&Ms and.
I just know I can never be a baker because I have no patience. But my other question to you is, you said you have a type.
I did have a type,
Right.
yeah.
80% of my girlfriends, they're older, they're in their 60s, 70s. They're mostly single, and they tend to go back the same type. Could you tell me what to tell them to break that?
Write a book. Write a book about their dating life.
My other question is, while you're going through that, if someone would have come and tell you, hey, that might be the wrong person, how will you react?
You mean at that time?
At that moment, if somebody, your good friend, saying, wait, you're going back to the same type, if somebody's bringing it up to you, at which stage?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. I'm not sure how I would react. I would really need to maybe trust that person.
We all have to go through our processes.
Yeah, and the thing is on the surface, these men were not the same. It didn't seem like it didn't really seem like they were the same. It seemed like I was, choosing physically they tended to be the same, but it seemed like they were different. But then when I really dug into it, I realized, no, I definitely, it's, I've got this sort of artist type that I'm looking for, and I just tend to, whether they're a musician or an artist or a writer, almost every man that I dated, even my last relationship, he was an artist too. And it took writing the book for me to realize I had a type, without saying too much, giving the book's ending, why I was attracted to that type, and learning what I needed to do to change it.
And you've been on a bit of a hiatus since since writing your book with baking. I know you haven't had.
I have not.
You had some things going on. What's happening in that?
Well, I have been doing a lot of these kind of events where I've been promoting and things like that. So that's been taking time. But I had a broken oven that I got fixed. I got a new oven, and then that oven is actually faulty, and I've been sort of working through that.
A baker's nightmare.
It is a baker's nightmare, literally. I've been looking at doing some of the recipes that I'm actually doing are going to be ones that I don't have to bake with. It's an intermittent problem. It's not every day, but I can't rely on it. I'm baking new recipes for the blog. I've got 3 of them, but the timing is off because there's something wrong with the oven. So something that I know should cook in 20 minutes, like a crust for a tart, is taking 25. And so I can't rely on it before sending that recipe out into the world.
Come on over, my oven's free.
That would help, because I'm always trying to find people to take my baked goods so I don't eat them all. I'm always like, oh, okay.
Just got a couple minutes left.
Okay.
Well, I completely.
And we started late, so we can go over a
Okay.
little bit.
I disagree. You can always bring baked goods to the first date. But
There's a story in the book about that.
yes, this is good. The notion of dating nowadays. By the way, because your book brought me back to like writing love letters, which I don't ever do
Right.
anymore, right? But I used to. And I was like, wow, I remember doing this. But how do you see the whole dating scene nowadays in this era of online?
So unfortunately, somehow the algorithms on social media have got me bringing in all the women that just have this the most atrocious people reaching out to them going, you know, I hate you, and you're I mean, like, just the men that are out there, and not all men, but there are just men that are literally posting profiles that are so belligerent towards women, and it's like, you know, if you're over 25, you're has-been, and if your body count's over this, it's shocking. And there's one guy that pops up all the time that literally, I don't know if anybody else has seen him, he makes songs out of some of the like the Tinder texts and stuff, and they're just so, like, you know, they're ridiculously just shocking, and the women are like, WTF, like, where is this coming from? So that's you know, I don't know that I even, it's like I keep saying, I don't know that I even want to date anymore, because I just feel like it's, I don't know that I need you know, I don't need anybody else in my life. They would have to improve my life. I don't need anybody to complete me. I need somebody who can maybe, you know, compliment me and improve my life. And as you get older, that's definitely slim pickings. Like, you know, I'm not, it's harder to meet those kind of people.
Just one comment from all my single ladies that they've been reading online, all the negative stuff happening to them. They told me, I'm not going to be a nurse, I'm not going to be a nurse. That's what they told me.
Yep.
That's what they're going to do.
Good.
Good. And yeah, there's a woman that she does she does something called block to burn and pick me. So many women are online going, you know, pick me. And she says, don't do that. You be yourself. You don't try to bend for anybody else. And if somebody says something that you don't like, or they give you the creeps or anything, you just block them. Just don't even give them a second chance. Don't be like, oh, well, maybe he had a bad day. You just block them and move on. Which I think if I ever go back online, that's going to be my philosophy, but I don't know if I ever will.
So Julie's book, Gluten for Punishment, Just Desserts for the Heartbroken, Lovesick, and Jilted, is available here in the store. So everybody pick one up. If you've already got one, be sure to get one for your neighbor or your daughter or your mother or whoever you think might enjoy it. It's a great book, and I really love it.
Yeah. I don't know, holiday gifts or anything else.
That's right, holidays are
just host or hostess gifts if anybody's going for Thanksgiving. You guys, thank you all. I really I appreciate you guys coming out and supporting me on this. This has been a crazy ride. We also have swag over here if anybody's interested. It's free if you want to pick some up.
She's also got a nice pen for signing.
Yeah, if anybody wants their book signed, I can do that as well. So you guys, thank you so much.
Thank you, Julie.
And thank you, Robin, for doing this.
My pleasure.
All right.